I bet you didn't know that Jesus might not have been born in December. While many celebrate his birth on the 25th, historical and biblical evidence suggests that the actual date may differ. Luke chapter 2 verse 8 mentions that shepherds were living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flocks at night. This detail is significant because it suggests a time of year when shepherds would be in the fields overnight. In Israel, the most common time for shepherds to stay out at night is during lambing season, which occurs in early spring, typically from late March to early April. This aligns with the time of year when lambs are born, and the shepherds need to remain vigilant to help with birthing and protect the newborns. This timing points to spring rather than December as a more plausible season for Jesus' birth. Bethlehem was known for being the location where lambs were raised for temple sacrifices, particularly the Passover lamb. Lambs were bred in this area, making it significant that Jesus, as the Lamb of God, John chapter 1 verse 29, was born here. Passover lambs had to be 1 year old to be sacrificed during the Passover. If Jesus was symbolically born during the same season as the lambs used for Passover, it would fit the typology of him being the ultimate Passover lamb, sacrificed for the sins of humanity. The Passover occurred in the Hebrew month of Nisan, around March or April, adding to the idea that Jesus' birth was likely in the spring, making him a year old at his crucifixion and fitting the pattern of the sacrificial lamb. Jesus died on Passover, and he rose from the dead on the Feast of First Fruits, Nisan 16th. This timing is crucial because these events align with significant Hebrew festivals in the spring. The connection between Jesus' death and the timing of Passover implies that his birth may have followed the same pattern of fulfilling prophetic and symbolic timing related to Hebrew holidays. The Feast of First Fruits also points to a spring event, further supporting the idea that Jesus' key life events were tied to the Jewish calendar, which strongly favors a spring birth. In Luke chapter 1 verse 5, we learn that John the Baptist's father, Zechariah, was a priest serving in the course of Abijah, which was the 8th division of the 24 divisions of the priesthood. By researching the priestly schedules, we can estimate the time of Zechariah's temple service and, consequently, the conception and birth of John the Baptist. According to historical records, Abijah's course served in the temple around late June or early July. Zechariah would have returned home shortly after his service, leading to the conception of John the Baptist. The Bible tells us that Elizabeth, John's mother, was 6 months pregnant when the angel announced to Mary that she would conceive Jesus, as described in Luke chapter 1, verse 26. This places Jesus' conception around December and his birth approximately 9 months later in September. If we factor in any slight variations in the priestly course timing, it is plausible that Jesus could have been born in late March or early April. Nisan is the first month of the Hebrew calendar and is often associated with new beginnings. Since Jesus' life represents the fulfillment of God's promises and the start of a new covenant, his birth in Nisan would symbolically align with this concept of renewal. Nisan 1 marks the beginning of the Hebrew ecclesiastical year, which could also suggest that Jesus, the one who brought about a new spiritual era, was born around this time. Jesus' crucifixion occurred on Nisan 14, the day the Passover lambs were sacrificed, and his resurrection took place on the Feast of First Fruits. These dates strongly connect his death and resurrection to the Hebrew calendar, reinforcing the idea that his birth may also have occurred in the same time frame. Every Hebrew month begins with a new moon, and Jesus' death occurred on a full moon, which coincides with Passover. The timing of his birth could be connected to the Hebrew calendar's system of lunar cycles. If his death occurred on a full moon during Passover, it is plausible that his birth, tied to significant celestial signs, such as the star that the Magi followed, could also align with the lunar and Hebrew calendar systems, further suggesting a spring birth. The wise men, or magi from the east, saw a celestial event that they interpreted as the sign of a new king's birth. Some scholars suggest that this star could have been a rare planetary conjunction, which ancient astronomers associated with the birth of royalty. This event may have occurred around the time of Jesus' birth, again indicating a spring date for this celestial sign. Ancient astrology often connected major celestial events with significant political or royal events, and the Magi, being astrologers, would have been attuned to such signs. According to Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 16, after the wise men visited Jesus, King Herod felt threatened and sought to kill the child. He inquired of the wise men the exact time the star appeared, as mentioned in Matthew chapter 2, verse 7, and based on this information, he issued an order to kill all male children 2 years old and under in Bethlehem and its vicinity. This indicates that Jesus could have been as old as 2 years at the time of the wise men's visit. Herod chose the 2-year range based on the time the wise men reported seeing the star, which they associated with Jesus' birth. If the star appeared when Jesus was born, Herod's calculation suggests that Jesus was between 1 and 2 years old at the time of the visit, not a newborn. This aligns with the timeline of the star's appearance and the wise men's journey. Historical records place the death of Herod the Great in 4 BC. This is a key detail because it allows us to estimate Jesus' birth date. If Herod died in 4 BC and Jesus was born 1 to 2 years before the wise men visited, this places Jesus' birth around 5 or 6 BC. Furthermore, Herod's inquiry about the star and subsequent slaughter of infants likely happened within the last few years of his reign, solidifying the timeline. This evidence helps us understand the historical context of Jesus' early life. The Magi followed a star that indicated the birth of a king. If this star appeared at the moment of Jesus' birth, their journey from the east, possibly Persia or Babylon, would have taken time. Some scholars estimate several months. This fits with the idea that by the time the Magi reached Jesus, he was no longer a newborn, but possibly a toddler between 1 and 2 years old. And they found him not in a manger but in a house, as noted in Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. These clues align with Herod's actions and the Passover lamb imagery, fitting the timeline of Jesus' early life. Herod's actions confirm Jesus' age and the star's timing. Herod's decision to kill boys up to 2 years old directly ties into the wise men's report of the star, reinforcing the idea that Jesus was born earlier than the visit, likely during the previous lambing season in spring. Since lambs used for Passover had to be 1 year old, and Passover itself took place in the spring, this aligns well with the hypothesis that Jesus was born in the spring. So, based on the shepherds in the fields, the significance of Bethlehem and the Passover lamb, and the alignment with Hebrew festivals, there is strong evidence that Jesus may have been born in the spring, around late March or early April. This timing coincides with the lambing season, reinforcing the imagery of Jesus as the Lamb of God. His birth, death, and resurrection all align with significant Hebrew festivals, which supports the notion that God orchestrated these events to fulfill his prophetic calendar. The celestial signs observed by the Magi and the symbolism of the moon cycles also provide compelling evidence that points to a spring birth for Jesus, making this a powerful teaching for understanding how deeply Jesus' life was embedded in the fulfillment of Jewish prophecy and the Hebrew calendar. While it's true that Jesus may not have been born on December 25th, the significance of the day lies not in the date but in the celebration of his coming. Rather than focusing on the commercial aspects of Christmas, we can use this day to honor God and reflect on the incredible gift of his Son to the world. What do you think? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.